and to become a more united community, working together on the same strategic plan with a focus to maximize the efforts that are being made by each entity. This is not a big enough community for you to have 15 different strategic plans going on. And I'll say that no matter what size community I'm in, I'm telling you. I'll say it in Douglas. Everybody's got to have the same playbook. You may be singing a different note, but at least you're singing the same song together. I can't emphasize that enough. And the smaller your community is, the more important it is that you have a unified vision to work on, because we just don't have enough resources, people or money. So why are all these entities created in Osceola and Earl County? Well, it's a means of providing certain services on behalf of the local governing body and to the community. So your city commission and your county commission cannot provide all these services and be the experts on everything that impacts your community. If you're serving on the recreation board, you've been appointed to that because they felt like you had an interest in recreation and would learn about it and be an expert and be able to provide input back to whoever was appointed by you to help make decisions. Scott's really good. He's a well-respected chairman across the state, but he cannot be the expert on everything in the county. So that's why we have different entities created. The city council and the county commission obviously are elected by the citizens in the community. These boards are appointed by either the city or the county or both. So they appoint members to represent the interests of the citizens and provide information, learn, engage, and have a vision on how they can implement a plan for the community. The Osceola Urban Chamber Board is a nonprofit, and their board is actually elected by the members. And I wasn't able to find out exactly what Sunnydale Service Center, how their board members are created. But the city and the county are responsible for making the appointments to everything else up here. So your responsibilities as one of these fine board members, you need to know what the mission of your particular board is. So again, using the rec board as an example, the mission of the recreation board is to learn about and implement recreation that the community needs. But they do that by making recommendations back to the board that appointed them, whether that's a city rec or a county rec board. So they don't have to go out and raise the money themselves, but they have to come up with the ideas, and then they bring those ideas back to the county commission that appointed them, who will make the decision and find the funding. So, you know, knowing how your organization fits into the community and why it exists is really important, your mission statement. You need to, if you don't already know what your mission is, read the resolution or the act that created your organization. You may have to go do some research to find that. Hopefully, someone within your board has the magic notebook that has a copy of the creation document that brought you into being. And if you cannot find that, then maybe you can be the person that goes and gets that research and figures out how were we created? Who made our appointments? How many members does your board or commission have? Or how many are they supposed to have, and how many do you really have? Because sometimes there's vacancies, and if nobody's keeping track, it just gets lost. You need to know what a quorum is for you. So if you have 7 members on your commission, whatever it is, you have to have at least 4 people there to have an official meeting. And if you are already missing somebody because a vacancy hasn't been filled, then you can run into trouble with having a quorum at any meeting. So, as interested members of your boards, know how many you're supposed to have, and when the vacancies come up, bring that to the attention of the appointing body. You know, your terms of service. Usually usually that's spelled out in how you were created. You're gonna serve 4-year terms, they're gonna be staggered, so you don't have everybody rolling off at the same time, kind of like the county commission when the elections happen. Yes, sir?
If you don't have a quorum, and you got 3 there, and you got one you can get on teleconference, will that work?
No, that's not legal.
All right,
Can we talk about it a little more, because I think some people do dial the person up, so that's.
There
can it
are
change based on
a
our resolution?
few entities that are allowed to meet by teleconference or video Zoom conference, but it's not widespread, it's not for every board. The chamber board can do what they like,
Right.
because they're not a governmental
That's
entity.
correct.
But anything that is appointed by a governmental entity has to follow the same rules as the government that appointed them. So development authorities are not allowed to meet by Zoom or teleconference. I think maybe hospital boards were made an exception because of COVID, that they were allowed to meet electronically, but most are not. You have to be in person. So, other things that you need to know is how the meetings are organized. Do you know who I know who you're the chair of the chamber. Do you know who your chair is? The vice chair, the secretary, the treasurer if you have one. And again, I'll refer back to, it's a great idea to have that notebook with all this information in it. So you can find it when you have a question. So what is your role as a board member? Well, first of all, is to attend and participate in your meetings. It's not just an honorific that you're appointed to a board or a commission. You know, you're making it, when you accept that, you're making a commitment to be there. To vote on actions that are in front of you. I have been in board meetings before where everybody was too afraid to take a vote. That's not being a leader. And the other thing is to represent the organization to the community. And that's really important. A lot of you sitting here today may not know what the other entities do. And so when you have the opportunity to talk about the service you're providing in the community, do it. Talk to your Sunday school class members, talk to your neighbors. Say, you know, I'm really excited. We're looking at X, X, and X. We think this is going to be great for the community. Take the opportunity, if you can get it, to talk to your civic clubs about, you know, this is what we're excited about. This is where we're putting our efforts this year. The more you can get the people in the community engaged and talking to you and reacting to the plans that your commission or your committee or your authority has, the more we'll all start working to support each other. So encourage that. And most importantly, your role is to be active. You know, you understand your mission. You educate yourself around that mission. So if you are serving on the mental health board, you do everything you can to learn about how mental health boards operate. Look at other communities. Ask questions of people that you know in other communities. How do you handle this? Do your homework. And proactively think about your area of responsibility and how that can help the county move in a positive direction. I'm not familiar with the strategic plan and the vision that got created, but I know that no matter what that is, you can see how your work on your committee can support that effort. You can find something in that strategic plan that meets the need of your committee or your organization to help move things along. Any questions about my preaching there? I'm very passionate about this. The communities don't progress without the citizens getting in it and getting their hands dirty and making those commitments to be leaders. So I encourage you strongly. So now what? It's not as exciting, it's boring sometimes, but it's really, really important that you know it. So we're going to go through it and help you understand it. How you operate in order to comply with existing laws and regulations while performing these services to the community. Follow your mission and your bylaws. And if you don't have bylaws, we don't talk about that. Understand ethics and conflicts of interest. And that comes up no matter what kind of board or commission you're serving on, at some point, it's gonna come up. And follow open meetings and open records. So, the bylaws tell you how you should operate. And bylaws don't automatically come with your mission when you are appointed. So this is another area where you need to find your bylaws. At some point, somebody probably developed some bylaws for the library board. You may not have seen them, but you can look for them. If you are unsuccessful, you can create bylaws. And that sets out for everybody how we're gonna operate our organization. How we're going to call meetings to order, how we're going to use Robert's Rules of Orders to be able to keep the meetings moving smoothly in the manner that they're supposed to, how many officers you're gonna have, what their duties are, who's gonna audit the books if you actually have your own funding. All those things are contained in the bylaws, and they're specific to you, they're not generic. So you craft those so that you can work within your organization in the manner that's gonna best suit the work you've got underway. So how do you deal with ethical issues and conflicts of interest? Well, first of all, everybody who's appointed to a commission or an entity that's created by local government has to follow the code of ethics for the state. Everybody. So, and also, if you receive as a nonprofit, over 33 1/3% of your funding comes from a governmental entity, then you become a governmental entity as well. And you have to follow all the same laws and regulations that the government does. So this code of ethics, I actually put the whole thing in here for you because it's pretty important. I don't want you to suffer through me reading it, but basically, never discriminate by the dispensing of special favors or privileges to anyone, whether or not for remuneration. So if somebody wants you to do something for them, it can be innocent, innocuous, but if it appears that you're doing it as a favor, whether you're getting remuneration or not, it doesn't look ethical. So it's, a lot of ethics is how it is going to appear. You may not have any intention at all of being a non-ethical person, but you have to put yourself on the outside looking in and be really careful about this. Never use any information that comes to you confidentially in the performance of your duties as a means for making private profit. That may never come up. But I will tell you that there are people out there that would love to influence those who have the power to make decisions in their favor by taking them to the ball game, or buying them dinner, or letting their kids come out and ride on my property. Whatever that is not ethical. You do not accept favors from people who are trying to influence you in making decisions. Never engage in other conduct which is unbecoming to a member or constitutes a breach of public trust. That's really broad and it's meant to be. So you think about the decisions you make. You think about how you talk to people out in the community. And you make sure that you are representing your organization ethically and that you are comfortable with answering any questions that come up about your behavior. All of y'all were raised just like I was. We do know right and wrong. So just you got to keep that hat on all the time. So if you have a substantial interest or involvement in an issue that's coming up in your board meeting, follow a procedure to make sure that you stay legal. And it's actually, fairly easy. You disclose that interest that you have in the open meeting. The meeting's been called to order. You know this matter is gonna come up, it's on the agenda to be discussed. And you go ahead right then and you say, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, I have a potential conflict. This meeting, we're gonna talk about putting a ball field on somebody's farm, and I'm a part owner in that farm. So I'm just gonna tell you right now, I'm not gonna be able to participate in this discussion. And that goes in the minutes. Whoever's taking the minutes, writes that down. And when it comes to the discussion, comes up on the agenda, you recuse yourself from the meeting. You actually leave the room. Because it's not fair if you sit there and nod your head or make faces as things are said. So you actually recuse yourself from the meeting until the discussion is over, and if necessary, if a vote has been made. And then you come back into the meeting. There's the term substantial interest or involvement means any interest or involvement that reasonably might be expected to result in a direct financial benefit to the member or to any of your close family members as well. One of the things that's hard when you're serving on Downtown Development Authority is because the way the Downtown Development Authorities are created, they have to have members that own property in the downtown business district. And so then when votes come up about facade improvements, or somebody wants to put a building in here, take one down, you have to recuse yourself if it's going to be a building that you're engaged in. And if you don't have a full board, if you don't have the full board there, by recusing yourself, you may reduce the number down so that you don't even have a quorum, so nobody can make a decision. So thinking about these things ahead of time. If you're going to open a Mexican restaurant, you're going to buy a new building, and the Downtown Development Authority's got to vote on it, but the Downtown Development Authority has a member who's part of the family, well then that member has to step away and not be engaged in that discussion or in that vote. Does that make sense?
Would a conflict of interest be if you work for someone that had interest in whatever the issue was? If you're on the board, you work for the person that the thing, would that be a conflict of interest?
It could be. I mean, and there's actually a clause in here that says if you have questions about whether something like that is a conflict, you can disclose it to the board and say, do you think this is a conflict? And the board can discuss whether they think it is or not and take a vote. And if the board says it's not, then you can remain. Yes,
What if you sit on the board and you got several people, whereas you have a conflict of interest, and they sit on that board, all they got to get up and leave out, and you're not going to call, what you do?
you have to figure out how to have the matter addressed differently. I mean, there's not an easy answer to what you just said. If you've got 3 members of a bank, for instance, the governing board of a bank sitting on the development authority board, and they all want to discuss who's going to get the next loan, well, that's going to be kind of hard not to have an interest in that. So, that you have to consider, we had a situation in one of the communities I served one time where there were 4 community banks, and they all wanted to have a seat on the development authority board, and so they got some local legislation passed to create a board like that, and then found out they couldn't get anything done. So they went back to using the old board. So, you know, honestly, you just have to work through it, figure out if this is gonna, if having all 3 of these people on the same board, and they're all talking about something they're real interested in, that's maybe not a good makeup for the board. So, again, handling those conflicts so that they fall within this safe harbor keeps you out of trouble. It makes sure that everybody feels like they're being above board, and there's no questioning your judgment. So, you leave the room, you don't participate in any discussion, and you make sure that you're clean. subject to open meetings and open records. Yes, lady gets the start. You are. Everything that the city and the county are subject to, you are also subject to if you're appointed by them. So, how do we comply with that? Well, again, I want to say, if you did a direct allocation of tax funds made by the governing body of any entity, you also have to comply. And I don't know how your chamber is funded, but this catches chambers.
They do apply.
Yeah, this catches a lot of chambers off guard because in smaller communities in particular, the Chamber and the Development Authority often share a facility and share staff, and so that ends up being more than 33 1/3% of funding coming from the taxing body. So that means you have to follow all the same rules. All meetings have to be open to the public. All meetings must have a pre-posted agenda. Now, the agenda doesn't have to be extremely detailed. It can be, here's the agenda, it's welcome, old business, new business, it's financial report, and that's it. You don't have to put down how it changes all the time. You have to keep minutes of all of your meetings, so you have to have somebody on your board or working for your board as a volunteer that will take those minutes and keep track of them. All votes at any meeting must be made in public. There are occasions, which I'm not going into detail on, but where you can go into an executive session to have a discussion in certain circumstances. But you cannot vote and have it be binding while you're in that executive session. You can have the discussion, you can kind of come to consensus, but you have to come back into the public meeting before you have a motion second and take a vote. And if there's somebody against the proposal or abstaining, you have to take a roll call vote and record who was for and who was against or who abstained in the minutes. On these notices for open meetings, for regular meetings, the notice that you post must say the time, place, and date. That meeting information must be available to the general public. It must be posted at least 1 week in advance of the meeting and maintained in a conspicuous place available to the public at the regularly scheduled meeting place or on the organization's website if they have one. It's not a requirement that they have one. A really good best practice is to set all of your meetings at the beginning of the calendar year and make one notice that says our board, our library board, our rec board, our chamber will meet the second Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. at the community house. And post that at the community house, but also at the county or the city that appointed your board. So that if the public wants to attend, they have a reasonable expectation of being able to find out where and when you're going to meet so they can attend if they want to. The meetings must be held in a regular schedule. However, you can cancel if circumstances require it. If there's a flood or you're not going to have a quorum because somebody's sick, or you can cancel the meeting. But you need to have that regular schedule set at the beginning of the year and posted for people to find it. Do most of your meetings happen at the city or the county government office or here? And is there a
They're
central
kind of
place?
around, like the city councils at City Hall, the county commissioners at the courthouse, the industrial development authorities at the chambers at the chamber, the historic commissions here.
Yeah.
So they're kind of scattered about.
So, a best practice would be, once you all know which boards and commissions and committees you're serving on, it would be a great idea to have a master calendar. And post that where people can find it. It'd be a great idea so that y'all don't have meetings at the same time and same place too. So, you're not on top of each other. So open records, again, because most of you are serving on an organization that is just like a governmental entity, you have to abide by the open records law. And it is basically everything. I'm not a FedEx announcer, so I can't read all of that really fast. But it's everything that you've produced in your work. So it's your minutes, it's your financial statements, if an accountant's done your books, it's those. If you have to get engineering done, it's engineering reports, it's everything. Whether or not it's actually in your possession, it can be in another entity's possession, like the accountant or the attorney or whatever, but anything that is your work product is open records. How do you respond to open records? Well, the organization has to provide for review and reproduction by the requesting entity all records in its possession or its agents, and not subject to an exception from provision. There's very few exceptions. You don't have to have that in writing. Somebody can just ask you on the street, I want to see the minutes from your last meeting. And you are obliged to comply with that. However, if you take the time to decide within your organization who's going to be responsible for answering any requests for information, there should be one person. The keeper. It can be your secretary, it can be the city or county clerk if they're the ones that keep all your documents. But that person, you can advertise that all requests for open records must go to this person. And so when somebody comes up to one of your members on the street and says, I want a copy of your minutes from the last meeting, you can say, glad to do it. Please call Sally. Send Sally an email. Send Sally an email and she'll get it done. You have 36 hours to comply with a request for open records, unless it's an unreasonable request for like 20 years of stuff.
Can I ask, the bylaws, are those open records?
Yes.
So you don't necessarily have to put in a written request?
No, you do not have to put in a written request. However, if your organization gets a lot of requests, it's a really good idea for you to actually assign someone to receive the request so that you know when the 36-hour clock starts. So if you can have, say, you want the minutes or you want the bylaws from this organization, you need to contact in writing the right person to say, please get this for me. And then they have 36 hours to comply.
So to be clear, if you have a system in place, just an oral request doesn't do it. You need to go through the process.
Yes. And that's just to save everybody so much headaches. Yes, ma'am.
Like you said, somebody wants 20 years of minutes, Can you charge the person for doing that research?
Yes, you can. And you can also, if it's something along those lines, it's so many documents that you're looking at, you can respond in writing that you are working on the request, but you think it's going to take 7 days instead of 2.5 days, just because of the volume. So that way, everybody knows when the clock starts running, if you're doing it in writing.
What is the charge?
So I didn't put it in here, but it is, there's two things. It's the lowest cost possible of making the copies. So in other words, you know, if you've got 3 different places that charge for making copies, the lowest possible cost, just straight cost. And the lowest paid person that's capable of fulfilling the request, and you don't charge for the first quarter hour, but you can charge for all the time after that, keep up with it and charge for it. And if the person that's requesting or the company that's requesting the records has done it before and has not paid their bill, you can refuse to do any more copying for them until they pay their bill. And I'll also say, I don't think, it wouldn't be my best practice, but you're not actually, you don't have to make the copies for them. You have to make them available for reproduction. So if you wanted to just hand over your notebook with your minutes and let them make it, you could. I mean, if it crunch comes to crunch, but that's not a best practice. I mean, it's better for you to go through and pull out specifically what they've asked for, make the copies and provide them to them. said, may designate one person or position to receive it. You have to do it within 3 business days or respond with an estimated time for providing if the request is complex. Now, one of the times when I was working up in Atlanta for the Department of Community Affairs, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution wanted to see every single grant that the state had made in the past 10 years. We invited them to come in, and we gave them a room and about 15 tables and a whole room full of filing boxes and let them go to it. There was no way we would ever be able to comply with that request ourselves. And so we just did what we needed to do to let them see the information they were looking for.
Is there a section that says if you charge that you have to let them know how much it's gonna be, so they can decide whether or not they can afford to pay?
You should estimate what it's gonna be. You can't tell them right that minute probably, because if they want the past 10 years of minutes or the past year of minutes, you have to figure out how many pages that is. And you can call them and tell them it's gonna be $10 or, you know.
So what if you, like, we're all very small staff, right?
Yes.
So what if, you know, say the chamber, and we've got the director and a support person, and they both were out with the flu, and somebody puts in a request, is that an excuse to say it's gonna take me more than 3 days? If
Yeah,
you just don't have the personnel
It has
to
to
do it?
be a reasonable response.
Right.
So, yes. So, number one, if both of them are out with the flu, is anybody even looking at their email?
Probably not.
So, that's something you probably ought to consider. If both of your staff people are out, somebody needs to check their email.
Yeah.
Is it 3 days for the response or 3 days to provide the information?
3 days to provide the information unless it's an unreasonable expectation that you could do it all in 3 days. Then it's, at least by the end of 3 days, you have responded in writing back, we're working on it. If the requester asks for these records in electronic form, and you already have them that way, you know, they're in your computer, for instance, then you should provide them in that manner. However, if they're not already electronic, you're not obliged to scan them or retype them into the computer or anything. You just make a copy. Like I said, the records must be provided for the requesting entity to copy or reproduce. You're not actually required to make them, but just provide them. However, my recommendation is you make them.
What are the penalties? I mean, if there's not any penalties, then
There are penalties, and they can
is it a
include,
misdemeanor?
It can be a misdemeanor, it can
Felony?
be with a fine, and I could be
Now,
glad
who would
to
enforce
provide
that?
that to you. The complaint would be made actually to the Attorney General. The Attorney General oversees all these open meetings, records, and ethics complaints. So this is kind of my wrap up, and it's do's and don'ts, and I don't actually have any don'ts, but I'll answer questions at any time.
On the open meetings, say if you have a board of 5 people and 3 of us go to the same church, we're in the same Sunday school class. And something comes up that we may discuss, that is considered a meeting,
I'm so glad
right?
you asked that. Yes, ma'am, it is. So, you have to be diligent to make sure that you're not abrogating these laws about open meetings and having a quorum and having a discussion and talking about official business while you're at a civic event, a social event, you just meet on the steps after church kind of thing, because you may not discuss, if you have a quorum, you may not discuss official business if it's not in an open meeting. So if you are on the Development Authority Board and you have a 7-member board and 5 of you are in the same civic club and sit across from each other at Rotary, you can't talk about official business. You can't talk about policy. That's against the law. And if you have a 5-member board, 3 is a quorum. If you appoint a committee on that small a board, so you want to have a committee to work on finance, or you want to have a committee to work on recommendations for a new ball field, and you appoint 2 people to be that committee, they can't really have a meeting unless it's an open meeting. Everything has to be open if it's a quorum, whether it's a committee of a board or the board itself. You can travel together to meetings, like if you are on the library board and there's gonna be a regional meeting, and all of you are gonna go, you're certainly welcome to, but you're not welcome to have discussion of official business or policy during that travel. And, you know, to a great extent, you have to police yourselves. I used to have to tell my development authority board, break it up, guys. I come into Rotary and we're gonna have a meeting later that day at the development authority, and they're over there, you know, I think, oh, y'all set separate tables if y'all are gonna be chattering now. You really do have to, you have to earn the public's trust in you. And that's what all of this is about, really. You know, they wouldn't, this is really country, they wouldn't have a law if somebody hadn't done it. But, you know, I want you to be excited about the service you're providing. I want you to be excited that the community's working together on a vision and that you have an important part to play in it. You know, be diligent and spend the time that the job requires. If you are appointed to, if you're elected to the Board of Education, certainly, we want you to be going to the meetings to help you learn more about how to be an effective board member for the Board of Education, and what your expectations should be for your staff and your teachers. And, you know, take the time it takes to be the best. Don't hesitate to seek the advice of experts. You know, again, rec board, you're looking at ball fields, you know, there's a lot of complaints, people want more ball fields. You probably don't have that expertise. You know, you want to talk to somebody that does planning for recreational fields and find out, well, what are the requirements? You know, what do we have to be looking at so that we can make some good informed decisions and recommendations? Do exercise your good independent business judgment. You know, when you're getting appointed to these boards and committees, it's because the people appointing you think you're sharp. So don't take off that sharp hat when you get into your committee meeting. Leave it on. Follow those rules that the law provides for. Keep the trust of the public that looks up to you and wants you to succeed because it's going to help them succeed. And especially be active in your roles in helping Scylla and Irwin County move forward to be the place that you want it to be. You've got really important roles, and I hope that you all will feel that fire and engage.
Yeah, profession. So I want to make sure I got this right. You're not supposed to talk to a board member. You're both board, there are 7 people. 2 of you talking fine.
Yeah.
It's just
Quorum.
quorum before, no.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just making sure I got that clear.
It's also talking about official policy or business. You can talk all you want about duck hunting, whether you're for
Yeah, but I'm talking about, yeah.
But yeah, having a discussion about whether we should sell this piece of property or not to Joe whoever.
2 people who talk about it, 4 can't. I'm just
And-
making sure we're clear on that.
And, you know, there's also a clause in there that says, and if it's found that you're using the excuse for a social meeting or a civic meeting to get around this rule, that's also illegal. So, you know, your city and county commissioners get training in this all the time. My organization called Vincent provides the training for the Association of County Commissioners, the Georgia Municipal Association. And Chairman Carter's been through most of that training. And so they get the opportunity to hear this stuff. I'm really thrilled that I was asked to kind of provide you some of this information too. And glad to be able to come across the county line, see my neighbors.
Okay, so we
Yes,
have any,
Yeah,
we got
I just
questions?
have one more
Yeah,
question.
no, let's just, hey, let's ask questions
Yeah.
while we have Sarah Lynn here with us.
And this is Project Vision. I don't quite understand, I guess, what Project Vision is. Is it?
Okay, let's go away from
from Project Vision, right?
Because
let me,
is it like a part of
no, here's,
all of this?
let me explain,
What is it?
let me explain. So back in March of '22, Walter Hudson, and the Industrial Authority said, we don't have a strategic plan. Help us figure out how we can make better decisions by knowing we, as a group and a community, know where we want to go. So what we did is we opened up to the community to come and be involved and do some brainstorming on what do we as a community think we want to be. And so we came up with this name, code name, if you will, Project Vision. So that's where you hear it's just a code name. And so as we did that, we created the community input, myself, created a strategic plan that highlighted, and I'll put this out, and it's been put on, actually it's all been on Project Vision's Facebook since 2022. Here's strategic pillars. We need to focus on housing. What does that mean for our community? We need to focus on jobs and careers and training. What does that mean for our community? We need to focus on recreation for old and young. What does that mean for community? So we came out with what we call these strategic pillars. And then at the same time, the county and the city are responsible for doing a comprehensive business plan, strategic plan. And they're required to do that so they can get certain grants and funding and things like that. So when Horace was still alive, he started that process with Scott, and the public hearing was just last week or so. Unfortunately, I missed the thing in Osceola Star, so I didn't know when it was. But that work was the official comprehensive strategic plan for the community. Those actually marry up very well with what we as a community had highlighted that we needed to work on and do. So I don't want people getting confused with this thing called Project Vision. It was just a way to start getting our community to work together and figure out what do we want to be when we grow up.
So it is an organization like.
No, it's not an organization. It's a concept. It's a strategic plan. We set a Facebook page so we could communicate to the community, so everybody could be part of it and put their input on what do we want our community to look like in 5, 10, 15 years. Because if you're all, I don't know how many of you saw Boys on the Boat, but if one's paddling here and one's paddling here and we're all clinking up, we're not going to get anywhere. So this was of how do we all get together and try to walk forward. And we came up with something, it's not very concrete, but we want to be known as the community that cares and connects for each other. Because we think that is a strength of who we are. And then, how we do that, we've got some great people that have been our elders that have led us where we are today. And we've got some great young people that is deciding we are going to stay or come back here. So how do we build off all of that to be the best that we can be? So Project Vision is not an organization, it's not a group, it's a way to communicate what we as a community are trying to do
So
and
it's
try to get forward.
kind of like a Facebook group.
It sounds more like just a
Well,
group of volunteers.
one of the problems was, is when we went as a community to Irwin County had some of the most powerful political leaders in any other county. And when we go to one of those people and say, hey, we need some money. Well, what do you need money for? Well, give me a plan. Well, we never had a plan. And so Project Vision originally started to try to come up with plans. So if you needed money for recreation, okay, here's what the money we need. And when you go to Tyler Harper about something about agricultural, since he's the Secretary of Agriculture, or when Jay Roberts was the #2 guy in the state for transportation, you said you had a plan. Well, I've heard politicians tell me, so, well, you ain't got a plan. You ain't got anything written down. You just say you want money. Well, everybody wants money, but you gotta have a plan. You gotta have it written down so they can say, oh yeah, that's a good plan. Well, and that's kind of how it started.
So it's just more of a voluntary basis and I guess I'm just thinking, because I've heard Project Vision a lot. I am a member of the page, okay? Joined last year.
Right.
But I have still been just a smidge confused, and so as you open tonight with Project Vision, and kind of say what it was in this context of this room with all of these other boards, I find myself just a little confused
That's okay, I understand that.
to-
I can see that.
What
I
is
would
it?
say that the comprehensive plan that Susan referred to is something that's required by state law, for the city and the county to do on a 10-year basis. And every 5 years, they have to adopt a work plan that follows how they're gonna get that done. What often happens in communities is the citizens aren't really engaged in that because there's a public meeting, nobody comes, the regional commission ends up writing the plan for the city and the county, it meets all the requirements of the state, so it's adopted. What happened is this project vision group said, well, we wanna really see how this is gonna, what can we do to make this plan work? And they're just trying to get people together to say, hey, this committee, one of the things that we found out in our meetings was, we need some more rec directors, talk to the rec department. Because the boards and the committees that are appointed by the city and county governments are the ones that have the official responsibility and the power to make recommendations back to those that appointed you. So Project Vision's a great way to get the community involved and saying what we want. But it's still gotta come back to the boards and committees that are over those areas to make recommendations and have it adopted by some organization as a part of their program work.
Right, and so that's why, and that's why, like tonight with Scott and Melvin, is we have got to make sure we're better training our leaders that are on these committees and boards, because they are the ones ultimately responsible for making progress, and we as citizens need to help them. So what we did was help to create a plan and a vision. That was then the real plan is the comprehensive plan. That's the official plan for our community, which is very similar to what the Project Vision plan is. But it's not a group, it's not an organization. It's a concept in the sky of what can we do, and people in our community have fed into that. Now basically what the Facebook page is just making sure we keep people informed. So many people said there's nothing to do in this town. When you start looking at it, there's a lot to do in this town. And we don't even list out all the high school and middle school sporting events and plays and drama and band. There's a lot to do in this wonderful town. So we've got us a comprehensive plan, the final plan, the public hearing, so that'll be, ratified. And it's then up to our committees and boards and commissions to lead our community. But it's also up to us. I'm a citizen. I'm not on any of these committees. I'm not on any of these boards. I am hired by the Industrial Development Authority to help them fulfill their mission. And so that is what we work on every day, trying to figure out how do we help our community prosper. And we've got our targets and our focus points and all that great stuff. And like she said, everybody's welcome to come and hear what we're doing and see what we're doing. So I encourage you, I thank you all for being here tonight. I think it's important. I encourage all of you to encourage your other board members to come tomorrow night. It's going to be repeat.
You don't have to come back.
You don't have to come back again. We did it 2 nights, so if you go to church on Wednesday night, you can be here on Tuesday, and if you go to church on Tuesday night, you can be here on Wednesday. So please encourage your other board members to be here. I'm sure there's a resource where you can go get a whole lot more in depth
Yes.
on this
And if
information.
anybody really wants the full packet of the statute and everything, I'm more than happy to give it to you. Just give me a business card or your email, and I'll email it to you.
And I don't want all the rules, they're important, right? These rules and regulations. But our key thing is be proactive. For us to be a great community, we on the boards, well not me, I'm not on one, people on our boards and committees, you don't just show up every month and attend the meeting and make a decision and move on. You are helping set the vision for whatever it is you have been assigned to be responsible for. Take it serious, because that's how we will progress as a community. So thank you for coming tonight. I know that you've had a lot going on, so we really appreciate you being here, and everybody have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you. These pieces of paper are really important to my
Yeah,
job.
please fill out the,
Motion for to get a raise.
right.